The mining moon was a place no one visited unless they were desperate or running from something worse. Its surface was scarred with old craters and rusting machinery, the remains of an age when the moon's tunnels had been rich with rare metals. Now it was nothing but wind, dust, and the hollow shells of long-dead industries. Deep inside one of those forgotten tunnels stood a structure far older than the mines themselves, a fortress of smooth black stone built by hands that were not human. It was here that Kieran found himself one cold morning, carrying a dented toolbox and muttering about how he always got the worst jobs. 17 years old, thin as a wire, and smelling faintly of the stable back at the cargo outpost, Kieran was the kind of boy nobody noticed unless something needed cleaning. When smugglers had used the ancient fortress to store stolen goods and left it littered with trash, the overseer decided Kieran should be the one to tidy up. He had no idea that the fortress was more than just a pile of alien rock. As Kieran's boots echoed on the smooth floor, his eyes caught the glint of frost ahead. The tunnel opened into a wide hall, its walls lined with massive cylindrical chambers. They stood like giant glass coffins, each one covered in a thick crust of ice. Shapes lay within, huge shapes, curled and still. Kieran froze, his breath catching in the thin air. Dragons. He had seen pictures in old books, heard stories told by drunk spacers in the outpost bar, but never imagined they were real. And yet here they were, each one the length of a starship, their scales dulled, their wings folded like sleeping sails. Some were black as shadow, others silver as moonlight, one so red it seemed to glow faintly even beneath the ice. He stepped, closer to the nearest chamber, his fingers trembling. The glass was smooth, and beneath it the creature's eye was closed. A line of alien symbols ran along the base, their meaning lost to him. He pressed his palm against the surface. The ice, under his hand, cracked with a sound like splintering bone. Kieran jumped back, but before he could run, the eye inside the chamber opened. It was gold, not the dull yellow of coins, but molten gold, alive, burning from within. The gaze fixed on him, and a voice, deep and ancient, spoke inside his head. Keeper. The word rang in his skull like a bell. His heart pounded, and he spun around, searching for the speaker, but there was no one, only the dragon, staring at him through the cracking ice. Who are you?" he whispered without meaning to. The voice came again, not in sound but in thought. "I am Orathar, last of the star-blooded. You have woken me, Keeper." Kieran's knees felt weak. I'm just a stable. Boy." The golden eye blinked once, slowly, as if considering this. And yet the bond is made. More cracks raced across the ice, spiderwebbing from where he had touched it. Frost slid down the glass, revealing the smooth curve of a scale beneath. The air in the hall grew warmer, and Kieran's breath came faster. The other chambers loomed around him, silent and still, but he could feel something now, like the low hum of a distant engine, faint but real. The fortress seemed to be waking with the dragon. Somewhere high above the moon's surface, far beyond Kieran's sight, a satellite hidden in the ruins flickered to life. Its sensors tasted the energy flooding from the fortress, and deep in, the black of space, something answered. Signals pulsed through the void, reaching a warship that had been waiting in the outer system for centuries. On its bridge, a tall figure in black armor opened his eyes and smiled without warmth. "The old blood stirs," he said, and ordered the ship to change course. Back in the hall, the ice shattered in a sudden explosion of steam and shards, the sound echoing like thunder in the tunnel. Kieran staggered backward, shielding his face as a gust of heat washed over him. The dragon's head lifted, long neck uncoiling with the slow grace of something that had slept for an age and now remembered what it was. Orathar's wings shifted inside the chamber, pressing against the glass until it groaned and split apart. One claw the size of Kieran's whole body tore through the frame, then another, and in moments the dragon was stepping free, steam curling from his nostrils. He lowered his massive head until his golden eye was level with Kieran's. "You will. Free the others," the voice said, calm but absolute. Kieran shook his head, fear and awe warring inside him. "I can't." "You will," Orithar said again, and for a heartbeat Kieran felt something warm and sharp inside his chest, a pulse of power that wasn't his. Behind him, another chamber cracked, then another. One by one, more golden eyes began to open in the dark. And far above, the warship closed the distance, its commander preparing to make sure those eyes never saw the stars again. Steam still curled from Orithar's nostrils, the heat rolling off him, melting the frost that clung to the black stone floor. His wings stretched wide inside the vast hall, the membranes thin and veined like living fire, each movement sending shivers through the air. Kieran had never seen anything so alive, so dangerous, and yet the golden gaze locked on him was not hungry or cruel. It was measuring, as if weighing the boy's soul. Behind them, the other stasis chambers groaned under the strain of awakening. Thin cracks of light began to snake through the ice, pulsing with the rhythm of slow, ancient heartbeats. Kieran took an unsteady step backward, shaking his head. "I can't do this. I'm not a keeper. I don't even know what that means." The dragon's voice filled his mind again, as heavy and certain as stone sinking into deep water. "It means you are the bridge. Our kind cannot walk this galaxy without one such as you. The bond is rare, rarer now than ever before." "I'm just a stable boy," Kieran said again, his voice smaller now. "I feed cargo mules, I scrape floors, I'm not—" "You are chosen," Orithar cut in, his mental tone leaving no room for doubt. "The others sleep because their keepers were slain, but you have the spark. The moment your hand touched my prison, it woke the bond. Without it, we will die in these cages." The sound of splintering glass rang out from the far end of the hall. One of the other dragons, a deep green with scales like overlapping leaves, of crystal, shifted inside its chamber, a low rumble rolling from its throat. Then another chamber groaned and split, releasing a wave of icy vapor. Kieran could feel something gathering in the air now, like the low hum of a great engine winding up after centuries. The warmth inside his chest grew sharper, and for a moment, he swore he could feel not just Orithar's thoughts, but flickers of the others, confused, hungry, expectant. Above the moon's surface, the warship descended through the black. Its hull was a jagged silhouette against the faint light of a dying sun, its engines whispering silent destruction. In its command chamber, Captain Varro stood over a table of holographic projections, his eyes narrowing at the readings. "Energy output is climbing," an officer reported. "At this rate, the stasis fields will fail on their own." Varro's voice was quiet but edged with steel. "Then we arrive before they are ready." He keyed a command, and the warship's hangar bays bloomed open, releasing sleek drop pods that burned toward the moon like falling stars. In the fortress below, Orithar's head turned sharply, his nostrils flaring. "They are coming!" Kieran looked toward the distant echo of rushing air. "Who?" "Hunters." The word struck cold into Kieran's mind, not because of what it meant, but because of the memory behind it, Orithar's memory. He saw flashes of armored soldiers wielding weapons of light, riding ships like metal spears, cutting down dragons as they rose into the skies of long-lost worlds. He staggered back, his breath quickening. "We have to hide." "We cannot hide," Orithar replied. "We must wake the others before the hunters arrive, or all will be lost." The green dragon's chamber shattered, the sound echoing like a cannon. Blast through the hall. Steam billowed and a deep, resonant roar rolled out, shaking dust from the ancient ceiling. More chambers cracked in answer. Kieran felt the bond between them tugging at him, pulling him toward the next sleeping shape, a silver dragon with wings that seemed to shimmer even in the gloom. "I don't know how," he said, panic lacing his words. Orathar stepped closer, lowering his head so his golden eye filled Kieran's view. "You will know when you touch the glass. The bond will do the rest." Kieran swallowed hard, his heart pounding, and stepped toward the silver dragon's chamber. He pressed his palm to the cold surface, and the frost beneath his hand fractured instantly. A surge of heat rushed into him, carrying whispers in a voice not his own. Above, the first of the drop pods screamed through the thin atmosphere, their hulls glowing red with descent. The hunters were minutes away. In the dark hall of the fortress, more golden, green, and silver eyes opened one by one, and Kieran realized that if they failed now, none of them, dragon or human, would live to see the stars again. The silver dragon's eyes snapped open the instant the ice cracked, a pale light swirling in its depths like storm clouds lit by moonlight. The voice that slid into Kieran's mind was softer than Orathar's, but no less commanding, carrying an edge of urgency. "You are late, little keeper." He flinched, startled by the tone. Late for what? The dragon's wings twitched inside the chamber, each movement sending splinters of frost cascading down. "For the war that never ended," it replied, and before Kieran could ask, the chamber burst apart in a shower of steam. The blast of heat nearly knocked him to his knees, but the silver dragon stepped free in one fluid motion, her scales catching what little light there was and scattering it like shards of a shattered star. Orathar's golden gaze shifted between her and Kieran. "We have no time for riddles, Celine. The hunters are coming." Celine's head turned sharply, her nostrils flaring. "I can smell their fire." Her tone shifted, becoming almost a hiss. "How many?" I don't know," Kieran stammered. "Orathar says they're close." "Too close," Orathar rumbled. His wings flexed, casting huge shadows along the walls. The boy must wake the others now. Kieran's gaze swept the hall, his stomach twisting. There were at least a dozen more chambers still sealed, some with shapes so massive they seemed to warp the air around them. But every time he thought about moving to the next one, he imagined the warship cutting through the sky, imagined drop pods slamming into the ground and armored soldiers flooding these tunnels. He clenched his fists. "What happens if they get here first?" Orathar didn't answer. Selene did. "Then we die in cages, and so will you." Above the fortress, the first drop pods tore through the thin atmosphere. The sky burned red where they passed, and a low roar rolled across the barren surface of the moon. Captain Varro stood inside his pod, hands gripping the overhead rail. His visor flickered with tactical readouts, and his voice was calm as he spoke into the comms. "Primary target is the bonded human. Kill the rest." The other hunters acknowledged, their weapons humming to life. In the hall below, the green dragon roared again, the sound shaking the ancient walls. Dust rained down, and somewhere in the shadows a large stone cracked and fell. Kieran swallowed his fear and ran toward the next chamber, his boots slipping on the wet floor. This one held a dragon so black it seemed to absorb the light, its wings folded tight against its body. He pressed his hand to the glass, and the cold was so sharp it burned. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the eye inside opened, glowing a deep crimson. The voice that came was heavy, slow, and carried the weight of something that had seen centuries of battle. "So, the chain is forged anew." Kieran didn't understand, but the warmth inside his chest flared again, linking him to this new presence. The chamber shattered, and the black dragon stepped forward, towering even over Orathar. His gaze moved past Kieran to the others. Hunters approach. "We know," Orathar said sharply. Then we stand together, or fall apart, the black dragon replied. His wings spread wide, scraping the walls, as if daring the moon itself to contain him. A deep vibration rolled through the floor. Impact. The first drop pods had landed. Kieran could feel it in his bones, the tremor growing with each second. Orathar's head snapped toward the far tunnel. They are here. Selene crouched low, her silver wings half unfurled, then let them come. Kieran's pulse pounded in his ears. The dragons loomed around him, powerful and terrifying, but he knew the hunters weren't coming for them alone. They were coming for him. The sound came first, a deep, metallic boom that rolled through the tunnels like thunder in stone. Then came the hiss of hydraulics, the heavy click of locking clamps releasing. The hunters were breaching. Kieran's breath caught in his throat as Orathar's tail swept across the hall, the motion sending a low wind curling through the air. Selene stepped closer to him, her body lowering in a protective arc. "Stay between us," she commanded, her voice leaving no room for argument. The black dragon's crimson gaze stayed fixed on the far tunnel, his claws gouging long scars into the ancient floor. "They think they hunt prey," he rumbled, "but they have stepped into the nest of gods." Footsteps echoed now, heavy, synchronized, and far too many. Kieran could hear the scrape of armor, the faint hum of weapons powering up. Then the first figure appeared in the tunnel's mouth, his armor dark and faceless, his rifle aimed. Behind him, more shadows shifted, each carrying that same slow, merciless purpose. Captain Varro stepped forward, his black visor locking directly on Kieran. "The bonded," he said, his voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. "Stand aside. Boy, and your death will be quick." Kieran's legs locked in place, every instinct screaming at him to run, but Orathar's voice surged in his mind. "Do not move." Selene's wings rose higher, silver light rippling across them like water under moonlight. "You can't take him," she said aloud, her voice a rolling growl. Varro's head tilted slightly, almost curious. "I have killed 3 of your kind with my own hands, Silver One. You will be the 4th. The first shot came like lightning, bright, deafening, and fast, but it struck a golden shield of flame as Orathar roared, the sound shaking the air itself. The hunters moved in a practiced wave, spreading to flank, their weapons spitting. Bolts of energy. Kieran ducked instinctively, the heat of a near miss searing his cheek. The black dragon lunged forward, his massive claws tearing through the stone floor as he swung, the impact against the tunnel wall sending a shock wave that flattened 2 hunters instantly. Selene moved like liquid light, her tail whipping out, to smash another into the ground. Still, the hunters pressed forward, their formation unbroken, their aim fixed on Kieran. "Move toward the far chambers!" Orathar's command thundered in Kieran's mind. "Wake the others!" "I can't," Kieran began, but a blast of searing heat passed inches from his face, and instinct took over. He ran, weaving between columns, his boots splashing through shallow pools of melted frost. Behind him, the battle became chaos, roars, the crash of claws against steel, the scream of twisting metal. He skidded to a stop before another chamber, this one holding a dragon of pale copper, her wings folded like a sleeping hawk. He slammed his palm against the ice, feeling the bond flare again, and the glass exploded outward in a wave of steam. The copper dragon's eyes snapped open, locking on him with fierce clarity. "I am Kaldrith. Who dares wake me?" "Hunters!" Kieran gasped. "They're here! They're trying to kill you!" Kaldrith's body uncoiled with the speed of a striking serpent, her tail snapping once before she vaulted over him toward the sound of battle. She hit the hunters from the side, her claws rending through armor like paper. The tide shifted for a moment, dragons driving the hunters back step by step, but then Varro raised one hand and a pulse grenade sailed through the air, detonating in a burst of electric blue. The waves slammed into Orathar and Selene, their roars twisting into sharp cries of pain. The black dragon staggered, smoke rising from his scales. Kieran froze, horror flooding through him. Varro stepped forward, his rifle still aimed at the boy. "Last chance," he said. Kieran didn't answer. He turned and sprinted for the next sleeping giant. Kieran's lungs burned as he ran, the air thick with smoke and the metallic tang of scorched stone. Behind him, the clash of war was deafening. Dragons roaring, weapons shrieking, armor cracking under impossible force. He skidded around a fallen column and nearly slammed into the next chamber. Inside, the dragon was unlike any he had seen yet. Emerald green with veins of gold running through her scales, her long horns sweeping back like a crown. She looked as though she had been carved from the very heart of a forest. Her eyes were closed, her breath slow, but there was a sense of watching, like she knew he was there before he moved. Kieran pressed his palm to the icy surface. The cold sank into his bones, and then the bond ignited, fierce and overwhelming, like roots plunging deep into the earth. Her eyes snapped open, glowing bright green. "The forest burns. The hunt is upon us," her voice said, each word edged with ancient sorrow. "We need you now," Kieran panted. "They're killing the others." The ice shattered in a shower of shards, and she stepped forward, her movements fluid yet coiled with power. "I am Valora," she said, her gaze already fixed on the battle beyond. "Stay behind me, little keeper." Before he could answer, she surged forward, her tail whipping out to shatter another column as she entered the fray. Kieran followed, ducking. Low, and what he saw nearly froze him. Orathar was down on one knee, flames still licking at his golden scales, but his breathing ragged. Selene's silver wing was torn, sparks of energy crawling across her body from the pulse grenade's aftershock. The black dragon still fought like a living fortress, but scorch marks marred his hide, and his roars were now punctuated with labored breaths. Varro moved through it all like a shadow, firing with perfect precision, every step bringing him closer to Kieran. Valora hit the hunters like a storm. Her claws moved in sweeping arcs, her tail smashing into three at once, sending them tumbling. She moved in perfect rhythm with Kaldrith, the copper dragon, the two of them weaving between each other as if they had fought together 100 times before. For a brief moment, the hunters faltered, their formation breaking under the sudden force. Orathar rose again, fire erupting from his jaws in a sweeping blaze that consumed half the tunnel. Selene leapt into the air despite her injury, her silver light cutting down the hunters from above. Kieran felt hope rise, until Varro raised a small black device in his hand. He pressed the trigger, and a sound like tearing metal ripped through the air. The dragons froze mid-motion, their eyes widening in pain. Kieran felt it too, a stabbing, splitting agony in his skull that dropped him to his knees. The device pulsed again, and Orathar collapsed with a roar, Selene following moments later. Even Valora and Kaldrith staggered, their strength faltering. Varro stepped closer, his visor reflecting Kieran's wide, terrified eyes. "You don't understand, boy," he said calmly. "These creatures aren't your friends. They're weapons, and I've been sent to claim them." Kieran forced himself to stand despite the pain, his body shaking. "They're not weapons," he said, his voice low but steady. "They're mine." The bond inside him flared, hotter, sharper, stronger than it had ever been. The pain from the device still tore at him, but beneath it, something else rose. A deep, ancient power, not just his own, but drawn from every dragon he had touched. Varro paused, sensing the shift, but didn't lower his weapon. Kieran's eyes burned now, glowing faintly with the same golden light as Orathar's. "You want to take them?" he said, his voice no longer just his own. "Then you'll have to take me first." The air seemed to vibrate around Kieran, as if the walls themselves were listening. The golden light in his eyes pulsed, matching the pounding of his heart, and with each beat he felt the dragons through the bond, not as separate voices but as one immense presence, ancient and unbreakable. Velora's strength surged in his veins. Caldrith's fire coiled at the edge of his thoughts. Selene's silver clarity sharpened his focus, and Orathar's deep, unyielding will anchored him. Varro took a slow step forward, his visor tilting slightly as if assessing a new kind of threat. "You're just a stable boy," he said, his tone almost curious. "You don't know what you're touching." Kieran's lips curled into a small, defiant smile. "Maybe not," he said, "but it knows me." The ground cracked under his feet as the bonds ignited fully, their combined power spilling outward in a wave of heat and light. The hunters staggered, their armor sparking as systems failed. The black device in Varro's hand whined sharply, before shattering in a burst of sparks. The dragons rose at once, their movements no longer hindered. Orathar's roar tore through the chamber like a storm wind, shaking loose dust and fragments from the ceiling. Selene spread her silver wings wide, their glow blinding. Velora and Caldrith circled to either side, their eyes locked on the remaining hunters. Varro reacted instantly, barking orders, his rifle snapping up, but his soldiers were already breaking, some turning to flee, others cut down by dragon claws before they could escape. Kieran didn't give him time to regroup. He stepped forward, the air swirling around him, each footfall echoing like a drumbeat. "Leave," Kieran said, his voice carrying the weight of every dragon's will. "Or be erased." Varro's visor turned toward him, unreadable, but something in his stance shifted. Tension, calculation. He fired once, a clean shot aimed directly at the boy's heart, but the bolt never touched him. A wall of golden fire erupted between them, the shot dissolving into harmless light. Orathar advanced then, his shadow swallowing Varro whole, and the captain finally stepped back. "This isn't over," Varro said, his voice calm but edged with something darker. "You've made enemies you can't even name." He signaled to the few surviving hunters, and they retreated into the tunnels, their footsteps fading into the distance. The moment they were gone, the chamber fell silent except for the dragon's breathing and the soft drip of water from the melting ice. Kieran's legs buckled, but Selene caught him gently with her wing, lowering him to the floor. "You held them," Orathar said, his voice softer now but carrying deep pride. "No, you commanded us." Kieran looked around at the four massive beings, still struggling to believe any of it was real. "I'm just a boy," he whispered. Velora lowered her head until her green eyes were level with his. "Not anymore," she said. Outside, the wind howled through the ruined tunnels, carrying with it the scent of ash and something older, freedom. The dragon's eyes met over Kieran's head, an unspoken decision passing between them. Whatever war was coming, the boy was no longer their keeper. He was their equal, their bonded, and together they would burn the skies if they had to.